at the end of the day, what we're trying to accomplish with rewriting the rules is experiencing growth individually, collectively, as teams. So, component number four is make growth conversations consistent and effective. And I think this is where, we just really help with that communication around where are we going? How do we get there? Where do you want to go? What do you need to do in order to get there? Jill, I think another part of it is creating the safety
Mhm.
of, making those bold steps and it's not just stepping out of your box sometimes. Sometimes it's just like moving to another corner of the box, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, there needs to be some boldness and some safety involved in those types of growth conversations. And so we're going to focus pretty heavily on that too.
Yeah, and I think as with everything, there's this intersection where, team growth, company growth, team growth, individual growth kind of comes together, and that's obviously the sweet spot where I feel like I'm growing and I'm committing, I'm contributing to a team that's doing the same, and then obviously the reason we're all there is the growth of the company. But, one of the things I read all the time, one of the things that I hear firsthand all the time is the extent to which personal growth has become, a huge metric of desirability for younger
Hmm.
people. Like they want to grow, they want
Hmm.
to learn. Now, in today's workforce, that's a huge offer you can make to your teams, that this will be a space where we are intentional about your growth,
Hmm.
not for the purposes of you just as an individual, but so that you can contribute to the organization. But we're again, the changing rules of workforce is that people can't necessarily rely on promotions in order to grow. People aren't even necessarily looking for that. So the old school kind of, I'll just put my head down and keep, collecting bigger titles, has given way to those titles aren't available for collection. People, those roles are disappearing, hierarchies are flattening. So what are we offering people in terms of their workplace experience that's going to keep them there over time? And to me, that's where this conversation is key.
And that is such a practical issue for so many of our viewers because if you're in a 50-person organization, you know, uh, accelerated growth up the ladder is probably not very realistic. And so,
Right.
how do you manage that? And as a leader, how do you manage that and set expectations? And as an employee, what is that definition of growth for you? I think sometimes, Jill, um, growth is very incremental. And so
Yeah.
we don't always feel it, or we don't always realize it until we get to a point and we look back and say, man, I've come a long way, or I'm really
Right.
proud of what I've accomplished. I think that's another part of this environment and culture that you and I want to help organizations create is where the growth becomes more palatable and people really
Mm.
recognize it and acknowledge it and get motivated by it. I think that's a missing piece a lot of times.
Oh, I do too. And if I'm honest, I think a lot of leaders are afraid to have this conversation because I think they're
Yeah,
afraid they won't be able to meet the expectations of their team
totally.
members, that
Yeah.
so they avoid it. And we all know that doesn't work. Those expectations are still there. They just go unsaid and unmet. So, let people lay it out. Let people sort of say, and then come back to, okay, as you say, here's where there might be opportunities for, real big tangible growth, whatever that might look like. And then there's the places where, we'll learn, we'll adapt, we'll gain all sorts of new capabilities. But it's one of those conversations that I think leaders, if they don't have this, it'll come back to haunt them,
Totally.
in the form of, losing some of their best people, in the form of sluggish performance and lack of engagement. So, I think again, that's why we're there, is to help have the conversations that maybe people know they need to have, but they're afraid of them or they don't feel like they have time for them. And what we're saying is have them. We're going to
Yeah.
have them, and the benefit of them will be felt to me, so quickly.
If they don't have those conversations, if they don't lead those conversations, they're not going to happen. They're
No,
not going to happen on their own. I mean, very few employees are going to step forward and say, "I want to have a growth conversation." You know,
they won't.
it might be in some personalities, but not very many, and so they'll go somewhere else where that is an obvious part of the culture. So I
Yeah.
think that component number four is going to be really impactful to organizations, and then